Good afternoon and welcome to our Snack and Learn webinar, Preventing Obtrusive Light, Put that light out. My name is Alan Howard. I am the Group Technical Director at WSP UK for lighting. I've been involved in the lighting industry for some 39 years now, and I am a past president of the Institution of Lighting Professionals within the UK, and also a member of the International Commission on Illumination, the CIE. I do a lot of work on a wide range of national and international standards and guidance, looking to promote good practice in the application of light and lighting. So today, what we're going to be looking at is we are going to look at the considerations of artificial exterior lighting. And within part of that, we will look at the benefits of artificial light, what it brings, but also look mainly at the concerns over its application and what happens when artificial lighting goes wrong. We will consider how to apply lighting responsibly in the exterior environment, and also look at how we as WSP are supporting a number of clients and developing national and international good practice. And then, as I say, any questions that you put into the questions box in the web platform, we will look to address at the end of the presentation. So the benefits of artificial light are wide and many. Predominantly, we're looking around safety issues. So we're looking at providing a safe road network, and that allows the users to identify hazards within the road, but also enable pedestrians and cyclists to orientate themselves and detect vehicular movement and other hazards within the areas that they're in. It's also there to support a safe working environment, to provide adequate lighting for the tasks that are being undertaken as people go about their working duties. But it also is an aid to the reduction in the perception of crime and disorder within the public realm. It allows us to ascertain movement and intent of others and therefore get an idea of how safe we feel within that environment and go through it. But it also has the benefit that it can enhance the local economy. It can improve the amenity of the area, as we can see perhaps by the middle photo, the photo at the bottom on the left-hand side here, where there's been a bit of creative lighting put into the city. And that creates an interest. It draws people into that area, and then hopefully they will look to spend money. But it also allows us perhaps to carry out sporting activities after dark, and therefore helps sort of the local community and the uptake of sport and activity at night. But we have a lot of concerns around the application of artificial light. Essentially, yes, lighting uses energy and carbon, so we want to reduce the sustainability footprint of the lighting installation. But there's also causes and concerns around light pollution and obtrusive light and light nuisance. And also it can have an adverse effect on fauna and flora. And the diagram we see here just sort of indicates the key areas of concern, where we have direct upward light that contributes towards sky glow. We have spill light towards homes and other occupied premises, light intrusion through windows, whilst at the main time what we're trying to achieve is the actual lighting of the task, so that the task is lit correctly and people can go about the tasks and the duties they wish to undertake within that area. And we'll look at these as we go through in the next 25 or so minutes. But when we're looking to understand the application of artificial light, it's governed by the environmental zone within which the installation lies, or abuts as well, because obviously there are adjacent areas. And internationally, we have an understanding that there are 5 zones, zones E0 through to E4, and we can see here from the table as to the definitions and the examples of what those zones are, from an astronomical dark skies environment all the way through to a town and city environment where you're going to have high levels of nighttime activity. And within these then dictate how we would look to apply lighting and how obtrusive lighting would be considered and assessed. So there are 2 real main concerns over artificial lighting. There are others and we'll touch on those, but the 2 photos here are of the same installation and demonstrate the two key aspects that really annoy residents and the public. The first is spill light, and now that's light that's emitted from an installation onto adjacent horizontal or vertical surfaces. And in the top photo, we can see just by the shadowing across the road that it's affecting the performance of the road lighting installation, but it is also really lighting up those houses over there and causing and putting light onto their property. We also have intensity. Now that comes in different terms. I mean, people might consider that as the brightness, it might consider it as glare or something, but it is the intensity of the light source. And the picture down the bottom here, we can see how bright those sports football club floodlights are towards the occupants of those houses. And certainly within the UK, this has the potential to be a legal nuisance. Now, we touched on environmental zones just now, and the table here is just one table out of many that indicates that within the different environmental zones, how much light we would allow to fall onto, say, a vertical surface, say the window, before we'd consider it as being an actual nuisance to the occupier there. And obviously within a city centre, we'll allow more light to spill than we would in a rural environment. But we also need to consider an aspect called glare. Now, glare is a condition of vision in which the discomfort or reduction in the ability to see details of objects is caused by an unsuitable distribution or range of luminance from a lighting installation. And we can see some examples down below where we've got real high intensity towards the observer in environments where it's making them feel uncomfortable. We've got two types of glare: discomfort glare. Now that's glare that causes discomfort without necessarily impairing the vision of objects. So you might go around somewhere and you really feel uncomfortable. You can actually see the scene ahead of you quite adequately and so forth. And then we have disability glare. Now that is the real critical factor, especially if we're looking at road safety and safety of the environment, because that is glare that impairs the vision of objects without necessarily causing discomfort. So you will have trouble viewing the scene ahead, but you don't necessarily feel a discomfort through that side. But quite often we consider this is sort of considered as a term of brightness. Now, brightness is really just an effect. It's not something we can actually measure and define, but it's a contrast. It's the uncomfortable brightness of a light source when it's viewed against a darker background. And we can see two images here where the intensity of the two lighting units, one's a traffic signal, one's a media screen, is really so high that against the dark background, they are actually quite disturbing images to actually look at within the street scene. But also, we've got to remember, it's not just us humans that are out in the outdoor environment. There's a lot of fauna and flora. And what we merely pick on just now is, say, the presence of bats and other protected species. Now, since the industry has moved to using LED lighting, it's a white light source, but has quite a high blue light content within it. Now, it's the blue light content that is quite disturbing to, for example, bats. And depending on the type of bat, it will affect them differently. And we can see from the little table here just how lighting can affect roosting sites, foraging, hibernation, and other activities that the bats need to undertake. But what we do know is that if we can use a warmer light source or perhaps a more amber light source, and we're seeing the development of LED light sources that aid this, that will have a mitigating effect and less of an effect on, for example, as I say, bats. But as you say, we've got to understand the species that are in the area. One size does not fit all. But also we can look, as we can see from the diagram below under the text, as to how we can create different environmental zones and different buffering zones so that we can try and keep the light as much as possible away from the flight commute paths of the bats. And the Bat Conservation Trust in the UK, in conjunction with the Institution of Lighting Professionals, have produced a bat and artificial lighting guide that we've contributed to, and that can be freely downloaded from the ILP site using the link that's available in the presentation and the notes. Another key factor that we need to consider is what's called sky glow. Now, this is the brightening of the night sky. There is some form of natural sky glow, but really what we need to consider and manage is artificial sky glow. It's a phenomenon. It is climate dependent. If there's more clouds over a city, there will appear to be a greater glow over the city than if it's a clear sky. It's not something you can actually go and measure. But what we look to do as we manage sky glow is we look to control the light that's emitted out from the luminaire in the arcs that are indicated B, C, and D on the diagram here. Because at those angles, that is where light is reflected back towards the ground off particulates and aerosol particles within the sky, and that's what causes sky glow. So if we can limit light out at those angles, we can reduce the effect of sky glow. So it's worth now just looking at a couple of examples of projects that we are working in or have worked in so far. And the first one we're just going to touch on is a project that's being run by our WSP Finland team, and it's for the city of Helsinki, who have been concerned about light pollution over the city for a while. And my colleagues are helping define and develop a citywide artificial lighting plan. Now, the causes of sky glow and obtrusive light, etc., within Helsinki are many, and we can just see some of the photos here that have been taken that show the different effects from very bright, perhaps glary light sources through to sky glow. And in the top right-hand side, we can see a media screen that is so bright that it actually reflects in the carriageway and the footpath surface across the road, and is really quite an intense nuisance side. So there's a lot of issues that perhaps all contribute to the sky glow and the effects. So the approach has been that the Finland team, is supported by myself, have looked at what is the problem. They've undertaken a detailed survey and had just under 4,000 responses, and from those responses people have indicated as to areas where they find that the lighting is acceptable, it's quite pleasant. There's areas where they find it's too bright, it's too dark, or they find that the lighting display is, say, too disturbing, etc. So from that point of view, all of that data has been collected so that we understand what people find acceptable, what they don't find acceptable, as helping to inform the plan as we go forward. And then where we find that people find things acceptable, such as media screens, then the team have gone out there and they've measured the performance of those to establish the intensity of these installations so that we can set a level as to what is suitable. And then going forward, it's still work in progress, but what we're looking at is we're looking at how to apply good lighting practice. There's areas from the top right-hand side that are going to be proposed as dark areas around the city where lighting will be really, really tightly controlled. And then we're looking, as can be seen in the different diagrams, as to how the light distribution can really be controlled and defined so that we're lighting what is necessary, but we're not having spill light, say, into the sea and the harbour area. And the little diagram at the bottom left just also indicates the sort of luminaires for exterior lighting that are being considered not acceptable, acceptable, and really acceptable in how they distribute the light to actually light the task. But also there's other aspects around, and road lighting is always seen as the worst contributor to the effects of artificial light. And what's happened over the last few years is that the standards have considered how we light the roads. And what we're now allowed to do is we're allowed to adapt or adjust the lighting level depending on the amount of traffic. And if we're looking at motorways, we light roads depending on the traffic flow. The busier they are, the more light we put on it. The less busy, we don't need so much light. So if after, say, 10 o'clock at night, the traffic flows, as we can see in the chart in the middle, demonstrate that the flow have reduced to below a certain level, we can actually dim the lighting down, which will save energy, save carbon. It reduces the effect of the lighting installation on any sensitive observers around the area. But at the end of the day, we're also still meeting the required lighting levels for that flow of traffic at the time. So we are not affecting the road safety. And again, there's some various guidance, such as the document here produced by the Institution of Lighting Professionals, that can be accessed and gives more information about how to apply this to road lighting installations. Now, one of the big issues around at the moment is media screens. Media screens have really taken off, and they've gone from being, say, the small little plinths that we see on the bottom right-hand side here to being 100, 200 square meters, a bit like the one on the bottom left-hand side, And there's a lot of concern that these are putting light out absolutely everywhere. They're a source of sky glow, they're a source of obtrusive light, and also the displays they show really can affect highway safety depending on the images that are being shown and how bright they are. So the International Commission on Illumination have set up a working group that I sit on and represent the UK, and we're looking to develop how we can look at guidance and requirements so that we restrict the light from these screens that goes and contributes towards sky glow. The fact that during the day or the night that the image is bright enough so the message can be portrayed, but it's not too bright or that it becomes a problem, or it's not too dim that you actually don't see the message. So this is guidance that's going through at the moment, and the report and the guidance should be published next year. And we provide an expert witness support to a range of planners, and we've been working with a lot of the industry to look at how these screens can be developed and be suitable for the environment that they're going to be installed in and proposed for. Now, it's all really good having designs done. The design is good, it looks fantastic on paper, etc. But then the next problem we encounter is the design versus the installation. And one of the main issues you get is that the contractor will say, well, actually, if I go and get this, it can be done, it can be built cheaper, and speaks to the client, and the client thinks, oh, I'm going to save some money. And the design changes without talking to the lighting designer to verify performance criteria. And what we find is that, say the designer has proposed luminaires set up as we can see in the bottom left-hand side picture, where the light is designed to go straight down and so forth. They've gone and installed them, as we can see in the bottom right-hand picture, where they're aimed incorrectly. And actually, most of the light from those luminaires is actually going upwards because of the way the optics are designed. Or they've gone and bought something really, really cheap, as per the middle picture, that just puts light everywhere and has no optical distribution. And it's really just making sure that we address this issue, because this is where a lot of the problems with installations arise. So if we're looking to mitigate and look to, as a client, as to what do we really want to get this lighting installation right, the first thing is to employ a competent lighting professional. They may be a member of the appropriate professional institution within the country, but they'll be able to demonstrate how their understanding of that application of lighting for the environment they're looking at. And we've got a little mantra, which is the right light in the right place at the right time, controlled by the right system. And this follows the 5 principles of responsible lighting, which is useful. All artificial lighting should have a clear purpose. So why are we putting in? If it's not needed, don't do it. But it's got to be useful. It's got to be targeted. So we're looking to light the task. So let's make sure that we keep the majority of the light where it needs to be, and it's directed to where it needs to be. Now, low lighting levels, this is making sure that the lighting installation is no brighter than is necessary for the task, whether that's a sports area, whether it's a road network or anything. We are looking to apply the right level of lighting. And then importantly, we're making sure that it's controlled. So we're making sure the lighting is only on when it is actually needed and when it's going to be useful. And then finally, color. We're looking to the right light source, which is the main mitigation, where really we're looking to create the right ambience within an area, but we're also looking to mitigate the effect on fauna and flora, etc. Now, there's a lot of professional industry guidance out there. As I've said, the International Commission on the Illumination, they've got 2 main documents, CIE 150 and CIE 126, which really provide a lot of good information on how to minimize the effects of obtrusive light and sky glow. And then again, within, say, the UK, for example, we've got the Institution of Lighting Professionals, who have produced a whole range of guidance, and we've worked with the Institution of Lighting Professionals on sitting on various committees or chairing these committees to help produce these guidance, to looking at the effects from obtrusive light to domestic exterior lighting, illuminated signs, and so forth. So there's a lot of information out there that can help understand and look to provide the right sort of lighting installations that will really mitigate the effect of obtrusive light, but actually make sure that the task is lit as required and is appropriate. So really, as we just come to an end, what we're just looking to do is to make sure that if anyone's looking at a lighting installation, agree the performance. What is actually required of it? What is going to happen? What is the environment it's in? Therefore, we know the limiting factors that wrap around all of that so we can design the lighting properly. Make sure that the client employs competent lighting designers that really understand how to do this. They can provide the calculations, they can look at the assumptions and the mitigation measures and so forth for the scheme to make sure it's right. But also make sure they're involved through the whole process so that they sign off the installation when it's being commissioned to make sure that what has actually been purchased, built, constructed is actually what was intended and it actually meets the job. And if that's done right, we can go out there and we can put lighting installations in the majority of environments that will light the task, do just the right thing, but actually have really, really minimal, if any, effect with regard to obtrusive light concerns. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening. We're now open to questions. My contact details and other information are there if you wish to contact me in the future to discuss anything around light and lighting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Allan, for a great presentation. So before moving into the Q&A period, I would like to remind attendees to enter your questions in the question box on the GoToWebinar platform. And also you can download a PDF version of the presentation from the handout box on the dashboard. Now, we received many questions from registrants. Thank you very much for logging those. I will start with the first one. What in your view is the main cause of sky glow light pollution, and how can it be addressed?
I think traditionally the main cause of light pollution has been street lighting, but actually over the years the street lighting industry has really addressed the problem, and most modern lighting installations are very good at controlling light, and this has been evidenced through works of astronomers such as Chris Kyber in Europe, and they've monitored cities by satellite overnight and actually had the street lighting dimmed down night by night at the same hour. And what it's shown is that aspects such as flood lighting is actually the main cause of obtrusive light and light pollution, and that street lighting, the industry has really got its head in the right place and is moving forward to resolve those issues. So street lighting is no longer the bad player out there.
Thank you. Next question. How can we beautify our cities without the use of obtrusive light?
We can beautify our cities. Within city environment, we are allowed to spill, to use a term, light around. We want to create a bit of wash up and down buildings so that people don't feel they're walking down a narrow area. But what it's good to do is to produce, say, a lighting master plan. And we've recently produced a lighting master plan for Westminster City Council. And that's looked at the different buildings and everything else to make sure that there's a uniformity in how we apply light, what the lighting levels are and how the application will be done. So that perhaps we're shining lights down buildings and lights up buildings and everything else. But it's just through sort of careful considering of design, and also within cities, making sure we don't have one building trying to outfight another one so that they seem to be brighter. And also, obviously, as I touched on before, we need to get a handle around media screens and how the performance of these installations so that they really don't adversely impact in the enjoyment of the space and the city. But a good lighting installation will draw people into an area and boost the economy if it's done well.
Thank you. Next question. What is the best anti-light polluting street light for municipal governments?
Well, I'm not going to go and start naming companies and all the rest of it, but it's a matter of looking at good optical design that has that basically puts minimum light above the horizontal. And really has a distribution that looks to light the area that you're looking to. So perhaps for a road, you want a longer distribution. For a car park, you want more of an over circular or boxed area, etc. So it's just a matter of looking at the optical performance and making sure that it sort of just fits into the requirements.
Thank you. How cost effective is directional light?
Cost effective, right. The more we look to control the light spill from luminaires, say if we look at road lighting, the chances are the closer we will need to put the lighting columns. And therefore you could say that would be an increased cost in the installation. But if we didn't do that, we would need to start putting light around about the horizontal and start spilling it more and everything. And you can't really put a cost on that. So what we're looking at is responsible application of light and lighting. And really, we don't want to be driven by someone saying, well, that's too expensive. We don't mind causing a bit of light spill and so forth. So it's a difficult question to answer, but it's just one of those things that you have to balance up costs and everything else against actually creating the right environment and the right ambience and everything else, and looking at sustainability.
Thank you. We have a comment here about the design versus installation side. They say here perhaps adding a photo or other graphics of proper intended installation to design a drawing package to help like spoon feed the contractor. In your opinion, does it help?
No. The reason I say that is I was called to go and investigate an installation a couple of years ago. I looked at it on the plan. There were all the drawings of the luminaires, how they need to be set up and all the rest of it. And I couldn't work out what could be wrong. And the contractor had built something totally different because he'd gone to the client and said, we can actually do this cheaper. You don't need all of this. And that's where, it's the client's got quite a responsibility in this, that if the contractor suggests something else, it might be cheaper, but don't think it's actually going to be the answer, because the installation I've just mentioned, they've had to go and strip everything back out now and go and put in the original scheme. So yeah, we can provide as much as we can, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's followed. Sure, it would be nice if it was. My life would be easier. Yes.
Thank you. Next question. How do you measure and or quantify glare, and compare to what criteria to determine if acceptable or at unacceptable level?
It's very difficult to measure. Well, glare is more of a perception than everything else. But if we talk about the intensity of the light source, it is actually something that is very difficult to actually measure out on site. And it's one of the things that the CIE are looking to address. Later this year, they're going to review CIE 150 and 126. One of the things we've got to look at is coming up with an approach that we can actually measure it, because we can measure luminance, but that is not intensity. We can calculate it. So if we're looking at a design, we can say, right, well, that's okay, that's going to be in the limits. But actually going out there to measure it is something that is not at all practical, unfortunately.
Thank you. I will take the last question. You have advised on artificial lighting issues, but can daylight also be a problem?
Yes, daylight can be a problem, and it's something we've been looking at over the last few years. There's a couple of issues, especially when you're starting to look at a lot of high-rise buildings. And we had one in the UK. Which one was it? I think it's called the walkie-talkie. But the design of the glazing on there was such that it actually focused the sunlight into quite a beam, and actually melted, did some damage to some road surface and vehicles. Because it just acts as a very good reflector. And of course, again, that also can be a problem for car drivers, and it was certainly a problem for the railway industry, because you get the sun shining off these buildings that can then actually be really bright towards the train driver, so they can't see the signals ahead. But also, media screens operate during the daytime, so they can be a problem. So artificial light can still be a problem during the daytime. And another area we've recently looked at is what's called right to light. And this is where there's a lot of concern. The big buildings are going up, and therefore other buildings and other premises are now in shadows. And actually, is that right? And there's actually, within the UK, we have this a process called right to light that could actually prevent that actually happening. So yes, there is a problem with daylight as well, but daylight can be extremely useful to reduce the amount of artificial light, say within an office block, if it's designed properly.
Fantastic, thank you. So we're at the end of our webinar session. Please feel free to follow up directly with Allan via the contact details shown on the screen. And I would like to thank all attendees for joining today, and big thank you, Allan, for a fantastic presentation.
No, it's fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day. I will wrap up the webinar now. Thank you.